Well, hello and good morning, and hopefully we are having a great start to our Thursday here. I think most of us are in attendance, and so I'm just going to get us started, dig in as we go through. Um, so again, welcome. So with that, your first assignment, causes of the Great Depression, was due yesterday, and so hopefully you've completed it and submitted it and turned it in. And if you haven't, you still have time. You just want to make sure that you keep on top of the deadlines. All right. And so what I would like you to do in the chat is, put your fix, your fix to the U.S. economy. What do you think? Put into the chat your fix to the U.S. economy. All right. What do you think when you look at that list of things that was contributing to the Great Depression? How would you fix it, is what I'm thinking. How would you fix it? What are some of the things that you would do? Either put it in the chat or you can unmute. Okay, so I see loans possibly given out there. Those get rich quick schemes. Maybe cynically, I think that's part of ingrained in some of in our DNA in some ways. How can I get that instant gratification, that instant let's get rich? But we do know that the get rich schemes did contribute to the financial instability. All right, give out some loans. Banks need to give out loans. Well, if we have people stop putting money into banks, where would we put that? Or is that just, I guess, do kind of like, what my grandparents did, the old Folgers coffee can approach there. Or just simply look at the banks itself, all right? A better banking system. And I think what is maddening about that is we did have the Federal Reserve System, and it was created after we had a financial panic in the United States. And the whole idea was it was supposed to kind of shore up our banking system, all right? But definitely banks have a role here as well. So, okay, some good fixes there. I definitely will look at your finished product and take a look at what you think those fixes are. It's a combination of it. There's not one what we'll call the silver bullet that's going to fix it. It's systemic. We hear that word used a lot today, but there was some systemic things that can be addressed here. But what we'll find out is it's really going to cause us to think about, roles, responsibilities, and maybe a philosophical shift might have to happen here. All right. So our focus today, as we can see on the agenda, is to look at the U.S. presidents, and more specifically, take a look at President Herbert Hoover. He is the president at the beginning of the Great Depression. And we also have President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who will be the president who's really going to guide us through the big part of the Great Depression, carry us in the Second World War. And so he will see the Great Depression end. So we need to take a look at, over these next few days, how the president's approach, and take a look at what's similar about it and what is different about their approaches. Okay. So for Herbert Hoover, not too many people tend to know a lot about Herbert Hoover. He is a one-term president. He didn't have necessarily, you might say, the typical path to become president of the United States. And when we talk about typical path, we look at a person was a vice president, a person was a general, a person was a member of Congress, or a person was a governor. Herbert Hoover didn't fit that mold. So he's unique in that regard. And so, but that also puts Herbert Hoover and former President Donald Trump kind of in that category, because President Donald Trump did not fit any of those criteria as well. So we do have some examples of presidents who kind of go, they have their different path to office here. All right, I got a video clip here, and it's going to give us a little bit more insight into the man, Herbert Hoover, and then we'll go from there. All right, so let me get my video clip going.
Former President Herbert Hoover died 55 years ago today. His name forever linked to the...
All right, let me mute myself here so we can hear the video a little bit better. And as always, when we watch these video clips, think of some takeaways here. And in this case, about this president.
The stock market crash of 1929 and the Great Depression that followed. But as Mo Rocca will tell us, there's a case to be made that the real Herbert Hoover was a far better man than the caricature.
In late October 1929, after years of rising to dizzying heights, the stock market collapsed, ushering in one of the longest and most painful chapters in American history. Herbert Hoover had been president for less than a year.
Who decides to call it a depression?
Hoover, actually.
Kenneth White is the author of a biography of Hoover.
Before that, they always called them panics.
Right.
He liked the word depression. I don't think he anticipated that it would be one that would be stuck to him for the rest of his life.
We'd like to thank you, Herbert Hoover.
And that's no exaggeration. Consider the 1977 Broadway musical Annie, where this correspondent first heard the name Herbert Hoover. A chorus of slum dwellers mockingly thanks the president.
Did the musical Annie annoy you?
What it did is it stoked in me this like burning dissent, like these people don't know the whole story.
Margaret Hoover is the host of PBS's Firing Line
Who do you think would play him in the movie?
and the great-granddaughter of the 31st president.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Okay.
This man lived 90 years, and he is judged for 4 of them.
And that's a shame, since Hoover's life before entering the White House was quite simply remarkable.
He lived here with his older brother, younger sister, and both his parents.
Oh boy, what a little house.
Yeah, it's 2 rooms.
Talk about a modest background.
Hoover, a Quaker, was born in 1874 in the village of West Branch, Iowa.
His father died when Herbert was about 6, and then his mother died a few years later when he was 9.
The orphaned Bert, as he was known, was put on a train and sent 2,000 miles west to live with his uncle's family in Newberg, Oregon.
Their only son was killed in a very tragic hay wagon accident.
So Herbert was essentially sent to Oregon to kind of replace the son that his uncle and aunt had lost.
In some ways, yes, but he definitely had to earn his board here. You think you would have been happy if you were weeding onions all day?
Sarah Monroe is the director of the Hoover Minthorn House in Newberg.
Was it an affectionate home?
Not particularly. I think it was very strict.
Absent the unconditional love of his birth family, Bert threw himself into work, determined to win respect and reward.
He had a deep, deep need to prove himself. And he also had an abundance of physical energy and intellectual energy that needed outlets.
He was accepted into the very first class of Stanford University, where he studied geology, preparation for a career as a mining engineer. Hoover's talent for turning around unproductive mines made him very much in demand the world over.
In his early 20s, he's running gold mines in Australia. In his mid-20s, he's off in China.
His relentless drive and his willingness to do whatever was necessary paid off.
He made several fortunes as early as his 20s and retired at the start of the First World War with about $3 or $4 million in assets.
Now, if Hoover's obit had been written in 1914, he would have been remembered as a talented engineer turned business magnate. But his response to World War I turned him into something far greater. When the war broke out, 120,000 Americans were stranded in Europe. Herbert Hoover, a private citizen living in London, assembled the ships to get the Americans home. Hoover followed this feat with an even more stunning one. Germany invaded Belgium and cut off its food supply. The U.S., still neutral, was reluctant to get involved.
Everyone was arguing they didn't have responsibility to feed the Belgians. Hoover said, "I'll feed them, let me through," and pretty much bullied his way through both lines.
Hoover himself convinced both the British and Germans to allow delivery of millions of tons of food to the starving Belgians.
He was dealing as though he were his own State Department.
As he put it, the feeding must go on.
Tom Schwartz is director of the Hoover Presidential Library and Museum.
How many people did Hoover and the commission end up feeding?
Between 7 and 8 million.
And he became known as the Great Humanitarian.
I still get emails and letters of people Hoover fed.
After the war, Hoover went from saving European lives to modernizing American lives. As Secretary of Commerce under Presidents Harding and Coolidge, Hoover set standards for everything from electric light sockets to milk bottles.
Get this, the dairy industry had previously had 42 different sized containers for milk. Hoover's the one who got them to do it by pint, quart, half gallon, and gallon.
And he brought order and safety to traffic lights.
He standardized it so red men stop, green men go.
He did that.
He did that.
But wait, there's more.
Hoover more or less laid the groundwork for the commercial aviation industry. He oversaw the development of what became the Hoover Dam.
And as the country's unofficial innovator-in-chief, Hoover was the very first person to appear on a live television broadcast.
He's a very modern man.
He is, yes, yes.
And in his spare time, Hoover and his wife Lou, one of the first women in America to earn a degree in geology, translated an ancient mining text from the original Latin.
I mean, they're real mining geeks.
This was published in 1912. It remains in print today.
When the Great Mississippi Flood of 1927 displaced hundreds of thousands, it was a foregone conclusion that Hoover would lead the relief effort. And he rode the resulting wave of adulation to the Republican nomination for president in 1928 and a landslide victory.
The greatest landslide in American politics.
I have no fears for the future of our country. It is bright with hope.
Only 8 months later came Black Tuesday. Franklin Delano Roosevelt would sweep Hoover out of office after a single term.
The Great Depression lasted twice as long under FDR than it did under Hoover. So why does Hoover get stuck owning the Depression?
Because when Roosevelt came in, he labeled it the Hoover Depression, and he never stopped calling it the Hoover Depression throughout the whole of his presidency.
It was FDR's successor, Harry Truman, who welcomed Hoover back into public life.
And Hoover is enormously grateful for that gesture.
In 1962, on Hoover's 88th birthday, his presidential library was dedicated. Only feet from the humble dwelling he'd been born in.
What more can a man do?
Former President Truman delivered remarks.
His record in his career, it is unequaled in the history of this country.
By the end of his life, he was rather proud of the fact that he was the only living American with a depression named after him.
Are you serious?
Yes, he could joke about it. But it took him a long time.
To get there,
Yes.
before he could own it.
A long time.
Okay, so there's the president at the beginning of the Great Depression. Do we have some thoughts about him?
All the hatred that he received seems rather undeserved considering the circumstances.
Okay. Again, valid point. And just basing it on that little video clip, you would say, give the guy a break. But now we talk about when we do find ourselves in difficult times, we always go to the point person, and the point person is the president. And whether or not the president has a role in causing it, or connected to it in any way, we're gonna throw it on them. If you take away the Great Depression, okay, you take away the Great Depression, he could go down as a really, he could go down as a really good president. If you base it on what he did before his presidency, he could go down, yes, as a great man. And so that always lends itself that how do we judge a person? Do we judge a person based on event or the totalitarianness of their, or the totalness of their career? Herbert Hoover is going to be, it seems to be judged by the Great Depression, and there's a lot of criticism that goes along with it. But prior to him being president, he was involved in a lot, one could say. Just in that video clip, it highlighted what he accomplished, what he did. The guy's a millionaire before he turned 40. And he famously said, if you're not a millionaire by the time you're 40, you're not much of a person. I mean, that's his benchmark there. And you compare to where he came from and to where he got to that point, he embodies this idea of rugged individualism. Through hard work, you shall get rewarded. And so that frame of thinking is going to play into his administration. All right. With that said, we have 46 presidents. All right. So we have 46 presidents. And, we are a ranking society. We like to judge. And so let's take the 46th president out, Joe Biden. So let's take him out of the pool. Let's take former President Donald Trump out of the pool because his presidency is fairly recent. And so we don't have a lot of time things to really evaluate over time. So take him out. And Grover Cleveland, he was president twice, but 2 different terms. They're not consecutive terms. So let's take one of them out. So where do you think Herbert Hoover ranks among the 43 U.S. presidents, again, with the exclusion of Biden and Trump? Where do you think he falls? What number? Between 1 and 43, where do you think he falls? Either unmute. I don't know, but you throw him in the top 10. Woo! Throw him in the top 10. Okay, that's bold. Come on, this is Minnesota. We do things in threes. So give me a couple more numbers out there. Back of the pack. All right, we got a back of the pack. So bottom 43 in there. Number 20, let's go middle of the pack as well. Well, I'll tell you, in 2017, he's maybe 15. Wow. Okay. Maybe that little video clip has influenced you, but I will have to, I guess I'm going to have to be the bearer of bad news. Let's take a look here. Yeah, let's go. Let's see here. We're in the top 20, and he's not even there. We're in the top 29. He's not even there. Oh, there he is. He's number 36. 36 out of 43. Okay. Now, one thing to think about here when we judge presidents and how they rank over time, that's a key thing, rank over time. We have to look at how many years were they in office. He's a one-term president, so he's only in office for 4 years, where some of these individuals up here, they are two-termers, typically, with the exception of Kennedy. He was assassinated during his first term. And so if we look in the top 20, the only one, there's two of them, several of them in there that were one-termers: Kennedy, John Adams, and George Herbert Walker Bush were one-termers. Most of the time, you're going to be two-termers. You got a lot that you can be judged on. Now, why does Herbert Hoover, seems like the great humanitarian, did a lot of good stuff, why is he getting ranked so low? Well, it seems the Great Depression is what puts him right there in the bottom. He in economic management, that's part of it. But then also how he responded to the Great Depression also puts him. Crisis leadership is in there, and setting an agenda. You know, presidents need to, when they come into office, they gotta have, you know, thoughts where they're going to bring us. And so one could criticize him about that as well. So it's the Great Depression that really is going to weigh in on Herbert Hoover over time. Now, the guy lives to 90. So he sees us recover, get through the Second World War. We're fighting the Cold War. He sees great economic growth of the United States in the 1950s. So he saw a lot after his presidency. He's not our longest living president. Our longest living president is going to be right now Jimmy Carter, who is 96 years old. Okay. So there we go. The great humanitarian. Now, our homework assignment, all right, is really dealing with President Herbert Hoover. So let's open that up if you have not. I did open it up earlier today. And we are looking at gaining an understanding of President Herbert Hoover's approach to the Great Depression. So this is really digging into, you know, why he is being ranked so low, perhaps. Okay. Now, again, we might evaluate different. And I think Herbert Hoover is, you know, getting a little bit more discussion, right? Because perhaps maybe some people are thinking he is being unfairly judged. However, this latest poll had knocked him down a little bit from 34 to 36. So you want to open it up. So this is like a guided reading activity. So I have the reading there. So you should not GTS it. You should not Google that stuff to find the answers. It's all related to the reading. So there's two parts to this assignment. First part is focusing on Herbert Hoover and the Great Depression. And so you need to explain 4 reasons for Hoover's administration's failure to solve the problems caused by the Depression. And then President Hoover is sometimes referred to as a do-nothing president. So that kind of indicates, when he became president, did all of a sudden a switch was flipped and he did the opposite of what he had done prior to being president, you know, being called the great humanitarian? Did he not extend that into his administration? Well, historians are engaging in what we call historiography, and they are discussing that. And then the second part, of course, is our BHQ, our big historical question. How effectively did Hoover deal with the problems caused by the Great Depression? You want to make a claim on the question. So basically, Herbert Hoover effectively dealt with the problems of the Great Depression, or Herbert Hoover did not address the problems caused by the Great Depression, and then give 2 supporting pieces of evidence. All right. Now, looking at how do I find these reasons? My little hint here for you is to, well, first you gotta rotate this PDF, but inside this PDF, I would look at the section or subsection headings. So that's going to be your context clue here. Okay. And that's how you're going to be able to find the reasoning in here. So everything should be found inside this reading. Shouldn't actually take that long. You're looking for 4 reasons. Of course, you know, again, you list the reasons, but you also got to explain the reasons too. So, you know, if you are going to say failure of agricultural policies, all right, which is going to be one of them, failure of agricultural policies. All right, I gave you a get. What is it? What was about his policies that failed? Okay. Any questions on the expectations here of this assignment? Okay. This assignment, I will say is, well, it's due today. And so my expectation is when you come to the Google Meet tomorrow, this thing is done. All right. It shouldn't take that long. It's a quick read. Only thing that might take a little bit longer is the summary question. All right. So with that, I'm going to keep this Google Meet open for the rest of the class period. So you can stay on, ask me questions about this, or you can exit and work on it during this time as well. You just want to make sure you have it done by the time you walk into or tune into the Google Meet tomorrow. Okay. So let's have success for today and have a great day.